The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. Welcome to today's webinar, Co-Creating with Parent Leaders, Lessons on Building Authentic Collaborative Relationships from the Parent Leader Network. My name is Iris Alent. I'm a consultant for the Funders Group, and I will be moderating today's discussions. Before we dive in, I would like to note that everybody will be in listen-only mode during the presentation portion of today's webinar, and we do strongly encourage discussion. So there is a questions box where you can type any questions you may have. And then in the second half of today's webinar, when we transition to the Q&A, you can raise your hand. It's a small hand icon next to your name, and you'll be unmuted to share your question, or you can simply type in the questions box. And if you do have technical issues, you can also message those there. And finally, I would like to note that this webinar is being recorded and will be sent to everybody who registered at the end. And you will be invited to respond to a brief survey about today's discussions when we close. Next slide, please. So this webinar is 1 hour in length, with the first portion dedicated to hearing from some of the parent leaders and staff of the Parent Leader Network about how they've been collaborating to co-create different projects, such as the Manifesto for Race Equity and Parent Leadership in Early Childhood Systems, as well as some of their mini grants for parent-led projects, and hear what they've been learning and how they've been adapting during these unprecedented times. In the second half of our webinar, we will have an open Q&A with our speakers, so we'll address the questions that come up in the questions box then. Next slide. Today's webinar was organized by the Funders Group on Parent Organizing, Family Engagement, and Leadership Development. And the Funders Group is a collaborative network of foundation professionals from about 20 grant-making organizations across the country. And they're really focused on improving philanthropic practice to better support, partner with, and elevate the voice and leadership of parents and caregivers from low-income communities and communities of color, so that families are centered in decision-making of programs and policies that affect them. The Funders Group really wanted to focus on today's topic because there are a lot of really important insights from the Parent Leader Network around how to authentically collaborate that can be applied to how funders partner with parent leaders, as well as how funders can support their own grantees to also co-create with parents. Next slide, please. I am very honored to introduce our incredible speakers for today. We are joined by 3 Parent Leader Network steering committee members. So first up, we have Nicole Berman. Nicole is a parent representative with the Great Start Parent Coalition of Kent County, Michigan, and a co-facilitator of a Kofi Parent Leadership Training. We're also joined by Idalia Rios, who is the Capacity Development Coordinator Consultant for Santa Ana Building Healthy Communities, and is an active parent of Santa Ana Early Learning Initiative. And we also have Dina Smitherman, a parent leader with the Boston Family and Community Engagement Network and a founder of the Young Men's Leadership Program, Edgewater Drive. And last but not least, we are also joined by Malia Franklin and Arthur Argomonis of the Center for the Study of Social Policy, who both support and co-facilitate the Parent Leader Network. If you'd like to learn more about all of our great speakers, we do have a speaker list with bios that can be downloaded from the handout section on the GoTo platform, along with some of the other resources that they plan to share today. So feel free to download those as well. And we'll also include them in the chat. Next slide. All right, well, with that, I would like to actually turn it over to our speakers to share with us more about their partnership and co-creation work together.
Hello, like Iris said, my name is Nicole Berman, and I would like to first thank you for the opportunity to share this space with you guys and for the opportunity to be able to share our experiences with the Parent Leader Network and being on the steering committee. So the Parent Leader Network is made up of more than 25 amazing, diverse parents from all over the nation. And so we are passionate parents that want to see a change in early childhood systems, and not just any change, but we want to see lasting change. Next slide, please. The Parent Leader Network, we provide an opportunity for parents to build relationships with each other, to work as a team, and also give parents an opportunity to speak from their perspective. Parent Leader Network fights for parents to be not only seen, but have our voices heard in the early childhood system. Next slide, please. Our vision is guided by the manifesto. And the manifesto is a guide for funders and agencies and parents to work together to create just an equitable childhood system that puts parents first, so that our concerns and our ideas and our needs are at the forefront, because it's all about making our kids thrive. Next slide, please.
Great, thank you, Nicole. And Dina, we want to ask if you could help guide us to talk a little bit about 2018 and the developing, a little bit of that history. And Malia's also here to help talk about that just for a minute.
Sure, can you guys hear me okay? Okay, so coming together to create the manifesto, a bunch of families from all over came together in Oakland, California, where we actually derived the manifesto, where we talk about all the indifferences, when we talked about all of the things all of the barriers that we were going through. And this absolutely gave the parents, the families, a chance to address those issues, and then have the staff and Miss Malia and everybody put together everything that we said, everything that we talked about. We didn't leave anything on the table. It was a grueling couple of days. We were heard, and it was the first time for many of us that we came into a space where we absolutely got to feel like somebody was finally listening to what we were saying, and how it was a possibility that things were going to start to turn around and change for us as far as us using our voices. From there, we launched a summit where we came together in North Carolina, and we got to meet other families who were on this same plight with us, and they joined with us, and we presented the manifesto. And that was, I think, the first time that I really got to see across the country what families were going through and the barriers that they were facing, and we weren't just alone in our plight. Expanding the steering committee, I think it's more than about collaborating, coming together with all the different families from all over the country, and having a bunch of family members who come from ethnic backgrounds, from different social places, coming together to engage and see what we can all do, because all of those voices actually are the catalyst in putting together what's going to make a difference. We have to stand together and share our views. We also came together in Chicago for Kofi training, and that's where we had, I think, one of the biggest impacts on our family and parenting engagement. And from there, we got to voice opinions about wanting to do more parent-led projects, and actually getting a chance to step up to the table and be a voice in actually what the steering committee was planning to do on a monthly basis, and our next steps forward. And we were supposed to, but not for COVID-19, going to our next summit in Portland, Oregon. But we did get a chance through Zoom to take on some new members just recently, and we just recently welcomed all of them to come aboard. And hopefully everybody out there listening and watching can understand how important this work that we're doing is to our communities and our families.
Yeah, thank you, Dina.
Yeah.
Idala, you're still on mute.
This happens all the time. So thank you, Dina. So I want to share my experience. I joined, well, my first time hearing about the manifesto and about the Parent Lead Network, it was in North Carolina. So to me, it was the first time being considered as a parent volunteer to go to a summit and meet other parents. So it was eye-opening to see that there was an organization with such values that will take care of other parents, it not depending or on the city that they live. So it has been an honor to serve on the steering committee this last year, and it makes such an impact to have these monthly meetings and the coffee training to go and beyond ourselves, our families, and then change our communities. So it has been a tremendous blessing to have all these resources to really equip the parents and to really go back and share and make change in our neighborhood. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And want to invite Nicole if there's anything that you want to talk about our expanding in 2020, some of the work that we've done.
Yes, I remember our all PLN meeting when we got done with the summit, and it was unanimous that parents there definitely wanted to have more parent leadership training. And so we all came together, and it was nice to come together and have a discussion about what parent leadership opportunities were even out there, what communities had taken part in them, and what were the pros and cons of them. And I remember Kofi coming up, and if you don't know what Kofi is, it's Community Organizing and Family Issues. And I just remember being able to talk about my experience and how I grew as a leader, not thinking that I was leader at the time, through the Kofi training, and how we came together and we made that happen. And we said, this is what we want. And we were heard and we were listened to, and the wheel started turning and things started getting put into action. And I was actually surprised. I was like, wow, what I said really matters. So yeah, that's my experience.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for sharing. So just want to talk briefly about the structure of the group. We do have 3 rings, really 3 circles. So the larger members are, parents from all over the country, people who are engaged with the materials, the manifesto on social media, taking advantage of some of those, the campaigns that are launched and kind of pushed forward. We meet a lot of folks at conferences and presentations. Well, we used to meet folks at conferences. Now we meet folks virtually. And we have leaders who have signed on to a pledge to really commit to putting this work forward and to really pushing for this, really positive parent engagement in their communities. And then we have our governors who are our steering committee members, who you see 3 of them today, and including Dina, who is one of the original steering committee members. So I'll be brief with that, but definitely open to sharing more information on that later if folks have any questions about it. And I'll pass it to Nicole.
What co-creation means to me. So as a parent leader, I know through my experience that I am an expert. Like, I know because I'm the one, navigating the systems for my family and for other people in my community. So I know that I'm the expert, but I want my life experience and my expertise to matter. I need to know and I need to feel that matters and that values. So I want my expertise valued in a co-creation setting. As a parent leader, I wear so many hats, y'all. I'm not even gonna lie. I just wear way too many hats sometimes, but I'm a mom to 4 kids. Not only do I do work with the Parent Leader Network and on the steering committee, but I work in my community doing parent work. I work part-time. So I juggle a lot and I wear a lot of hats. So my time is very, very important to me. And I have to make sure that I'm choosing the right things to give my time to. So my time is valued. And I want to feel like my time is valued. And a great way to value parents' time is to offer a stipend. It helps break some of those barriers, break down some of those barriers for us in doing some of the work that we do. Parent leaders, we desire a seat at the table. As you hear us talk more and more today, you will hear that from us, that we're passionate and we have that desire to be at the table, but not just for the sake of sitting at the table. Anybody can take up a seat, okay, can warm a seat, but we want to be seen and we want to be heard, and we want to build relationships with organizations and funders and agencies. It's important to us because we know that building relationships creates an equal partnership where it's a give and a take, and it's not just a give and to give and to give from the parents. So we want that equal partnership. Would you say the same thing, Idalia?
Yes, yes. And I heard a comment once that the people who are not in the table are just part of the menu. So to me, it was, it meant a lot. It meant a lot because if you're not on the table, and I didn't realize what you just said, Nicole, that it's not just taking a seat, but it's acting and really build. How do we have an impact in our leadership? When we are talking about a movement, an initiative, a change, a coalition, and when we say parent-led or community-led, and if community or parents are not in the table, then that's something to think about because the experts are the ones who are living or the issues. So yes, to have an impact, we really have to go with the experts. So yeah, I totally agree with what you mentioned, Nicole. And so it's when we're talking about parent engagement, it's more about listening to the issues and really working together and collaborate together to really make changes. It's not just the parent who's going to make a change. It's not just the organization. It's really working together for the well-being of whoever we're working for. And in this case, our children and the importance of early learning. So we really have to have those continuing opportunities to exercise and develop leadership. And like we mentioned earlier about the coffee training, how do we really ask, if you're not taking care of yourself, if you don't have that personal wellness, how are you going to be able to take care of your families and then community? So this is where organizations come handy because then they give us they equip us with the right trainings, the right resources, stipends, anything that needs to that the tools that we need to have to really go back and make those changes together. So it's a 50-50. I wouldn't say 50-50. It's just a collaboration between the two.
Yes, absolutely great. And if can I add one thing to that about the collaboration and having a seat at the table? We often learn through our trainings that it makes more sense to, if you as an agency or organization is making a change or having a thought that what is better for families within the community, who better to have at the table than those families and those parents at the community? We often talk about how agencies in the past are very, it's easy to say, well, they need this and they need that, but sometimes you might be given books when children need shoes. So you have to have parents at the table to actually figure out, and that's where those great collaborations come into. When we talk about collaborations in the, you have to collaborate, funders, staff, agencies, and families and parents. So.
Great. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Nicole and Idalia. We have some examples here, and wanted to see if we take maybe 30 seconds to share any of these examples. And again, we could share more if people have specific questions, but just wanted to see if any of you wanted to take 30 seconds before we go on to talk about some of the lessons learned.
Sure. I can just say that co-facilitating, that's a part of growth, and we've been actually blessed to have those trainings and have you guys help us out with that. Choosing the Kofi model for leadership and development, I don't think there's any other model. There probably is, but this was fitting for our steering committee and for our parents, and it was easy. It was hands-on. It gave us a chance to stand in our truths. And many grants for parent-led projects, again, having that collaboration, having families actually be the directive of some of the grants that are coming down, because it's easy, again, for an agency to say, well, this mini grant is going to be for X, Y, and Z, when really that community and those families need A, B, and C. So having parents actually, have some hands-on experience. And actually, it's also a great, all of these experiences, all of these tools that we've been taught throughout the steering committee are stepping stones. They are absolutely stepping stones, because we wouldn't be able to get this training, these things, having these engagements and these experiences, but not for this organization, but not for the steering committee and the manifesto. And it's absolutely equipping us to be great leaders. We can basically sit at any table. We can sit at any table with any authority, with any government agency. We can sit at the table and have those intelligent conversations because we've had the footwork through this organization.
So now, Nicole and Idalia and Dina, we can invite you to share some of the lessons learned. It's not always been easy working together. There's been a lot of some healthy struggle, maybe not all of it healthy, but so we want to hear not just what didn't work, but like, what are the specific things that you can call out for the folks in the audience that really work in that co-creation process? And maybe we'll start with Idalia. Idalia.
Yes. So one thing that has worked, it's first of all, listening to parents, listening to them, listening to their filling out expectations. But in as an example, what has been challenging? Obviously, when Nicole was mentioning about the exhibits, and that's when we talk about fiscal sponsors, because not a lot of fiscal sponsors are open to value or show appreciation to the time that is getting invested from parents. So another thing that has worked is, and when we talk about the coffee model, it's giving us the tool to really think about what are my goals for the next 3 months, the next 3 years, and the next 10 years. So when we are working on a grant, there's always a timeline. So when we have that timeline, sometimes it's kind of trying to do or to fulfill that timeline, but it's sometimes it's hard to really just give out numbers, give out data, and just really forgetting about the experts and really forgetting who are being more impacted with everything that is happening. But I will give the opportunity to my other parents to share a little bit more.
So Nicole, why don't you take a minute?
Yeah, something, and we're talking about what has worked. Something that has worked, that I feel has worked for parents, especially new parents coming in, because I was that new parent last year coming in, was feeling like what I have to give and the person that I am right now is enough. The talents and abilities that I bring to the table is enough, and that I have something to give, and that was something that was fostered in the environment that we were in. That it's okay, like Nicole, you're fine right where you are. Like you are valued. You have something to give. Like don't be afraid to speak up. And yes, it might not be as polished as you want it to be, but that's okay, because it's still valued and it's still important. And I think fostering that environment is what really works for parents. when we're, you know, sitting at tables and everybody around us has degrees and they're saying all these fancy words and we're like, should we even be here? But just creating that environment and making parents feel welcome and that they have something to offer is what I feel has worked.
Should we go on to the next one? Do you want to go on to the next one, or should I talk a little bit from my perspective what has worked? Down to the next one?
You can start this one, though.
Okay, leveling the playing field. That's a big thing. That was a big thing. Getting organizations and agencies to kind of sort of level the playing field in the sense of what we talked about earlier, is letting parents have a seat at the table. Taking a step back and actually listening to what we have to say about what we need within our communities, because we actually do the footwork. We're out on the ground. We're meeting with the families. We're doing parent engagements. We're doing screenings. We're inviting families to the table. So just giving us the opportunity to actually feel valued. That's what leveling the playing field has done. And I think that's what it needs to continue to do. And I think especially when we talk about people of color and dads, it's harder to get some of our dads to the table because they feel like so much is stacked against them. And I think that this steering committee has unbiasedly and non-judgmentally, no matter where each of us have came from, set us at that table. And I don't feel like any one person is bigger than me. You know what I mean? And I think that's a big thing. When you give people an opportunity to tell their truth on an even playing field, they will tell you their truth. And I feel like that's the main way you get to help a community. That's the main way you get to help a group of people, is to have them tell you their truth. Because when they're put in a position to hide things, we don't get to help them. And so, and that goes into prioritizing the relationships that we have with agencies and organizations. To me, all of the issues that we've come across and we've talked to, they are a priority. You know what I mean? And so just getting those relationships and those organizations to understand that we, the parents, are important. So,
Nicole, I remember you had this great idea about introductions and how to handle introductions at a meeting. And I think that would be really helpful for folks in the audience to hear.
Absolutely. So a lot of the tables that I sit at that I get to be involved in, something that I have learned that has been helpful to me that they have done was to start off with just introductions, like stripping off, you know, the titles and all of that, but helping us see each other as people, as human beings, on the same level playing field, and just starting off with like introductions to get to know you, so that we're taking the time to get to know each other. And it kind of like it makes, I know it has made me feel like, okay, I'm just like the person that's sitting right next to me, even though she's in a different position and does a different kind of work, but she's a lot like me, and there are some comparisons there, and so like we can relate, and that makes me feel comfortable in that environment where I feel like there are people higher up than me. Like, what do I have to offer? So it just kind of levels that playing field and brings everybody back down to earth.
Should we go on to the next slide? Here's where we get to the questions. Idalia, you had some thoughts about the first question. Are you here?
Yes. So who's doing the work and who's benefiting? So when we were talking about stipends, it sounds like, oh, so if we don't give money to the parents are not going to do the work. Well, no, the parents are already doing the work. But when we're talking about how do we value parents, it's more of how do we help parents to work with us together and to really work as a team. And sometimes even helping with childcare. that will make a huge difference. Why? Because most of us are parents, and if we're parents, that means we have kids. So just childcare will make a difference. Just having a light snack. Well, now everybody is at their home, but those things we need money to provide so we can. There's a saying: "Happy stomach makes happy life," right? So that's why it's very important to work with fiscal sponsor. And another thing about when we talk about parent leaders that are not getting any paid, it's heartbreaking to when we have a grant and we have expectations, and then we are asked to go to interview for evaluation. Who makes the right how do I say this? Who makes a criteria for success? Who measures success on a grant? So I believe that if you really want to impact a community, you have to go there and really know that community. And like Miss Dina mentioned, how are you going to give out books if the need is shoes? So maybe we just need shoes for the kids to go to school. Maybe we just need parents to learn English so they can help their children with their homework, so they can help children on their first years to know the ABC song. Simple things that are going to have a big impact on our community. So another thing that I want to share with you, it's about evaluation and about the work that we want to get done. We sometimes don't think about a sustainability process. So when that grant is done, how do parents continue with that work without an organization or without someone that it's not pushing, but probably leading the work? We really have to equip parents. We really have to equip communities and give them a sustainable way after a grant, so that way the work can continue and it'll keep giving us the big impact on our communities, or a bigger impact on the early learning for the kids. And when we talk about early learning, I wish I knew all the things I know now when I had my children, because then that would be it would have made a big difference. But now we're advocating for those new mothers or for those children from 0 to 3 that they don't have any programs or any education that can make change on their future. And I'm going to give the opportunity to my co-parents.
Dina, I think you're on mute. Dina, you're on mute still. There you go.
I'm sorry. I just want to add a little bit about who's doing the work. We also talked about this, and I would use my agency. 89% of the programs that come out of my agency are run by parent partners and volunteers. And who benefits? The agency benefits. The families benefit, but the agencies benefit. But not for those programs, all of those grants would not come to that agency. And from that, parents love the agency that has after school programs, that have early child care, that have training for parents, that offer parents opportunities to go back to school. We run those parents. We run those programs, and we are the volunteers. And so, yes, our families benefit, but also the agency benefits greatly, and it just goes hand in hand. If you took away all of those, if you took away 10 programs at my agency, there would be a lack of need. It would be a lack of things that we have to give that the community and the families need. They wouldn't have anywhere to go. And so I think that's a lot of the reason why parent leadership within the manifesto was so important, to show agencies that without these parent partners and these volunteers that are doing all the work, the community also will hurt. The community would hurt.
Dina, you had a great example of another thing that might be really useful for our audience around when funders change the expectations and how sometimes you're the last to know. So maybe you could share that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the reason why we say put parents and put your parent partners at the table, because this is something I'm standing in my truth when I say that I just recently experienced this. We have a grant, and the grant is, if it's from October to October, we know the criteria of that grant. We know what's expected of us in that grant. But midway, funders have the ability to change the narrative of that grant. And so everybody knows that, except but the people who are actually doing the work. And I absolutely want to make sure that when I'm given a task, that I want to complete that task. It's very important to me that when money is poured into my community, into my center, that it's part of my job advocating for families, that I make sure that my parents get those things that are given to our community. And I just think it just creates a sadness when the higher ups just go in and with a flick of a pen can change. And when you do something that seems so small at the table, the impact is humongous in the community. And I think that those things should be thought about before. I mean, a simple 20-minute conversation with somebody who's out on the ground, to ask the question, if I change this, or if I make this change, how much of an impact will it have or not have? When you really care about the people, I think that we should definitely start behaving like we do, because it really does matter. Like I said, a stroke of a pen changes the lives of 200 to 300 people at a time, and sometimes it's not fair.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Dina. I think that for organizations who are on the ground working with parents, as well as for funders, I think it's important to think about, we talk about having a seat at the table. Like, there's only one decision-making table. I think there's so many decision-making tables, like even before a grant, like who gets to decide which grant folks go after, how people are submitting their grants. So I think we're really curious from you all, as participants on this webinar, to think of, to submit those questions. What are some of the struggles that you've had? What are some of the questions that you might have for the parents? And as they've engaged in these processes and been engaged across different points, but very rarely have been engaged across the whole continuum of some of these services, delivery programs, campaigns, and even evaluation, to Idalia's point. So we're really curious. So feel free to submit any questions, and we'll be getting to questions momentarily. But we wanted to move on to ask Nicole to talk just a little bit about how we're adapting to COVID-19 and the pandemic right now.
So my organization put out a survey to parents in our community, just asking them, what do they need? And when that survey came back, we were shocked with overwhelmingly how parents were saying, we need emotional support. We're at home with our kids all day. They used to go to school. We used to get a little time to ourselves. So self-care is not something that we can do right now, or feel like that we can do right now. So what my organization is doing is we're providing parent cafes, virtual parent cafes for parents, right after, around the time that they put their kids down to bed, to just come in and be able to have the opportunity, a safe space to be able to talk about the ups and downs of parenting, and be able to speak from their experiences and be able to learn from each other's experiences. And parents are leaving these spaces just feeling like a weight has been lifted, like they can go and now they can care better for their children. Not only that, but we also applied for a grant actually for the relief fund, and we found out that parents were saying they were having a hard time finding formula and diapers because everybody was taking them off the shelves and they couldn't find them. And so what our organization did was we went and we purchased 300,000 diapers, and we distributed them to hygiene pantries and diaper banks all over the county, so that parents can get access to diapers when they need it. And so we're trying our best to meet as many needs as we possibly can, because we're parents, so we know the needs that parents have, and so we're trying to meet them where they are.
Idalia, maybe you can just add a little bit about your experience in the undocumented, observing the needs of the undocumented community as well.
Yes. So, well, I'm from Orange County. I'm from Santa Ana, to be more exact. And this is the fourth city more populated in the United States. So we have a 97%, it's Latinx community. So.
Oop, we can't hear you now, Idalia. Let's jump to you, Dina. Do you have anything to add from your experience in Boston?
Yeah, so I know Idalia lives in the heartland, but I can talk a little bit about our undocumented families within Boston, the city of Boston. So our East Boston communities have the heaviest population of immigrants and people of color. And I say this, and every time I say it, I get chills. I get chills because we know that they are there. We know these families go to school. We know these families work. We know these families get other services. We know these families are in our low income housing, which is you have to go through an agency to be placed in this housing. So we know that they're there. So when this pandemic hit, those were the communities left behind. Why do you say? Because they're undocumented, therefore they don't qualify for certain monies and certain foods and certain funds that are out there, to what our government said that every single person in America had qualified for. So they literally here in Boston, they left our communities out. And so that's where these agencies and programs like mine had to come and kind of sort of pick up the slack. And I think that is unfortunate as a country to have this go on, because these are the families that we are talking about. These are the families that you were just engaging in politics with. So you know that they're here. We all knew that. We didn't expect for this to happen. We didn't expect for families to be lining up for 7 and 8 hours just to get bags of food, because these are the people of color who are in all of those jobs who were shut down. And so again, you know that they're here, and you know that they're children, and you know that they're families, and oh my gosh, we know that they're here. And even right now today, it's still an issue getting our undocumented families services that we know that they need. They need them just like every other family here in America. They need those same services. And I think that we felt them. We felt them here in Boston, and I can only imagine in other states they were felt too. So we literally we have more steering committee members who work and who live in these communities, and we actually, wherever the funds and wherever the monies and whatever the gift cards, wherever the Pampers, wherever the books, wherever the activity kits, we went to those communities and we did the best that we could. We have food pantries miles and miles up and down the East Coast, and we tried, but the government did not look in on our minorities like they should have.
Thanks, Dina.
I want to apologize, but this is a perfect example of what is happening in Santa Ana. So the internet is not a good internet, and a lot of families don't have access to internet. So what else can I say? So this is what is happening. So
great way to make a point about equity. Maybe we should go to the next slide.
Yeah, I just want to call out this last slide, and hearing from so many parents, or this last point on this slide, that folks, we've definitely heard that folks were struggling before. Families were struggling, communities were struggling before the pandemic, really engaged in racial justice work. And, so some of these, the pandemic has really exposed some of the the real struggles, and really brought to the forefront some of those struggles of communities. And we have parents who are actively engaged and want to just take some time as we wrap up for each of you to take a few seconds to talk about the manifesto. And I know we wanted to have Nicole kind of give a few points here.
Mm-hmm.
So our manifesto is just like it said, it's going to provide a blueprint for you. It's where the rubber hits the road, people. If you're looking to make a change, this is where you begin. This is where it starts. It starts right now, right here, with this manifesto. Our manifesto is made up of 5 commitments. The first one, as you see, is challenge racism. It's all about breaking down those barriers, okay? But in order to break down a barrier, you have to realize that there's a problem. That you have to be honest that there's a problem in the first place. And a way that you can help solve the problem within your agency right now is just saying, hey, I need to train the staff that I have here to deal with some of the racial issues that are going on. Let's have a conversation. So the next one is about embracing parent leadership. Parents, you guys need to see parents as experts. The experts that we are, we're here, we're doing it. I know we've already said it. We're boots on the ground. We're navigating these services. So allow us to be a part of the decision-making process. Don't just have us be a seat at the table just because it's required. Let our voices be heard. The next one is prioritizing resources, making parent engagement a priority. So when you're looking at your budgets, don't let parent engagement be the first thing that you cut. It's got to be a priority. So make parents feel valued. Creating career pathways is the next one. Make parent life experience matter. Like I said, I don't have any letters behind my name. I didn't finish college. I had financial issues, but my experience should matter when it comes to applying for a position for like a care coordinator or a peer educator. So making those experiences matter. And the last one is maximizing equitable outcomes. I love this one because this simply is begin with equity and end with equity. Make sure that the people who you have working for you in the communities represent the people who live in the community. That's how you begin with equity, so that we can begin to take care of some of these disparities and turn them up, upside down.
Thanks so much, Nicole. Fantastic.
Thank you. I want to see if there's any, before we go to questions, if there's Dina or Idalia, and Idalia might have frozen on us again. Just to take a few seconds to share on this before we ask our host to help us with some of the questions from the group.
I will just say that, like Nicole said, I could just piggyback off of that. In implementing this manifesto within your agency or your program, it's a great way to start, because all of the issues that we're going through right now, that we're facing right now, they all matter. And it's a stepping stone. It's a foundation of the change that could come. I know a lot of agencies who have adapted it. I was instrumental in making sure that my agency was one of them. Whenever an issue came up at my agency, I would go flipping through my pages, because right here, it says right here. And so there was times that my director, she would hate to see me coming with this manifesto, but it turns out that it's a good thing. And it's a great way to hold agencies and staff accountable for some of the things that they clearly sometimes don't even recognize is going on. So I say this when I first started to talk about the manifesto, I started to notice that a lot of the staff members, it was easier for me to bring up these issues because I was a parent partner and I'm not employed by my agency. So there was a lot of fear in some of the staff addressing some of these issues, even though they knew that they existed. So I was that voice, and it's not a hard conversation to have. It's not a hard thing to do. You don't lose anything. You only gain great leaders and great leadership. Like I said, challenging racism and embracing parent leadership. What can you lose by embracing parent leadership? What can you lose by asking one of your parents who shows up every single day to your agency to drop off the kid? What would you lose if you gave her a position? If you took that on? We all know about prioritizing resources. It's the best way to make sure that families get the things that they absolutely need. The manifesto was a great thing, and it absolutely, when people say things change lives, this is something that has changed lives. It's brought some of us out of a shell. It's gave some of us voices. It's gave some of us power that we did not know that we had. And sometimes power is not something that you always have to use. You just have to know that you have it and you can obtain it and you can make a difference. So I could just leave it at there.
I wanted to just share one thing that kind of drove the creation of the manifesto was the realization CSSP as an agency is very, racial justice is a key value. And when we were diving into family engagement, we realized that whereas racial justice in K-12 education is out there and in public health, that's kind of out there and addressed, it really wasn't in early childhood. And even though we had issues such as suspensions and expulsions of 3-year-olds from preschool, we weren't really linking racial justice issues to early childhood. And when we talk about barriers, for example, if you don't speak the dominant language and the agency doesn't have staff, you're talking about the solutions being nested in family engagement into building those partnerships. And so we see the two as intertwined. You can't do authentic family engagement without addressing racial equity. And the manifesto is a way to bring that together. So we just wanted to leave you with that thought and invite your questions now.
Just wanted to add, I'm sorry for jumping in, but I'm sure that if you guys are parents, if you are a grandparent, you want the best for your family, the best for your kids, the best for your grandchildren. So it's the same thing that we want as parents. And if we work together and if we really show love for others, then the community will show a change. So it's something that if we work together, imagine if the same way we fight for our families, the same way we fight for others, then we can have a better humanity. So I just want to share with you guys that if you are already being part of a group, if you're already funding, if you are already working with others, just do the best and think about your family and think about those families that are out there, and then together let's make change. So thank you so much.
We're ready for some questions.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for sharing so openly. And like Dina, you said, standing in your truth about your experiences in co-creation and partnership. And really appreciated the examples that you provided to really paint that picture of how you break down power dynamics in relationship building. I think that's so important. So one question that's coming up is around, I know that compensation to value parents is a big piece. And I'm curious, with relation to inclusion of all parents, how have you seen compensation done well to include undocumented parents specifically?
So well, I know that many communities deal with the issue of not having, for example, being like a lot of organizations need a W-9 and a taxpayer ID number. And so gift cards are a way to get around that. So some organizations do 100% gift cards so that there's no difference between one parent and another parent. Anyone else have something to add to that?
I just think whenever we're doing in-person meetings, and if there's traveling involved, like you really just have to take into account the many barriers that you might be setting up. and also thinking about, people's comfort with either traveling across different states, flying. There's just so many things that go into that, people's comfort and ability to do those things. But specifically with payment, I think to Malia's point, it's being receptive to and really listening and talking to the community about what's working and not working, and not just saying, oh, well, these are the parents that we're getting, so these are the ones we're going to work with. We really heard that, to represent the community, you really have to be creative and talk with the community to figure out what's really working and what's not working, not just what seems to be working.
Yeah, and can I just add to this a little bit? So I've definitely had the experience of working on a grant for an agency a few years ago when I first started out, that they said, okay, we're going to pay you for your time, right? We're going to pay you for your time. And if I started working on a grant until February, I promise you, when they paid me, they owed me 8 checks. So saying that you're going to pay me, but then valuing the fact that you are paying me is two different things. They had the money, they acknowledged it, but every single week it was, oh, it didn't come in. So it was an agency that the staff who worked there, they got paid every Friday. And I was there every single day, Monday through Friday from 8 to 1. And so some agencies have this careless attitude about parent partners or volunteers. Like, okay, we will pay you. It's in the grant that the parent partner has to get paid. But how they value that, how they value you, kind of sort of sometimes comes into play. And I must say, just really quickly, through this manifesto and through these steering committee meetings, that cannot happen to me, because you find that voice. And I can admit, at first, I felt kind of powerless, to hear them say every Friday, oh, it's not this, maybe next week, maybe next week. They owed me 8 checks. And to put that in perspective, parent partners, at least at we get paid once a month. So that was 8 months that I went to work faithfully and ran those programs. Once a month, a parent partner gets a check once a month. And so they owed me 8 checks. And so just having those conversations, and then again, learning and going through experiences and trainings that, yes, my voice does matter. And I don't have to just walk away, just keep walking away and keep saying, okay, and then having counted on some of those funds sometimes and it didn't come through, like, it's disappointing to my family when I don't work. So that is an issue still probably right now in some agencies. But as far as just learning how to ask for going over somebody's head and not feeling ashamed or not feeling embarrassed or not feeling guilty that I have to ask for that money, that I have to ask for that fund to feed my family or to do whatever. So I just wanted to add that.
And I wanted to add real quick that when we're reading the proposals or when we're reading budgets, we should check if there's some money allocated for parents. And if there is, how is that money really getting to those parents? Because I had there was in my community group, we were working within an organization, a community organizer, that for the last 26 years, we haven't given out stipends to parents. So that when there's a change, the whole community benefits. So they don't believe on stipends to parents, but they do believe on having parent volunteers every activity they have. So just to keep in mind that, like I mentioned earlier, childcare, as simple as childcare, so a parent can volunteer with the peace of mind, can make a big difference.
That's fine.
Thank you. Next slide. So first of all, I want to say, on behalf of the funders group, I really want to thank you all for the time that you took to share how you've worked together and authentic and meaningful ways, and how we can really apply those to funder practice, and how funders might work with their grantees. So I just really want to thank you, all of you as speakers for your time and your expertise and your insights. I do want to also note a couple ways that folks can get involved and stay connected to the funders group. So if you are not a part of membership and you want to join, please reach out and join. This is a learning community and a growing learning community where you can have a lot of access to cross-sharing opportunities. You can join the mailing list as well as look out for our convening in 2021 to be announced. We'll be working side by side with a lot of parent leaders in that, and then participate on our upcoming webinar on September 30th. Next slide. I also really want to thank a special thank you to the Lucille Packard Foundation for Children's Health for hosting this webinar. And thank you all to everyone on the line for joining us and participating in this really great conversation. And again, we'll be sending out the recording as well as resources from this discussion. So if you have questions for the panelists that come up after, please feel free to email them and we'll get those to them as well. And, I just hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And don't forget to fill out the quick survey at the very end. All right, thank you. Take care.